Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Wednesday in the Riv. Missed you guys on Monday, but they've laid Dave to rest and start off the show by telling everybody just keep Dave in your thoughts. He was a pioneer in the labor movement for the police. He helped organize the police association. He was I think he was one of the original members of the Fall River Credit Union. When they developed that was developed in conjunction with, I think, some firefighters. I think Louis Shea's father was involved in that stuff. And he did an awful lot for workers and for the regular people. So a lot of that stuff is missed because that's when people needed unions to protect them. They still do, but a lot of these unions have devolved into political organizations rather than organizations to protect the rank and file. Unions were developed to protect the people who didn't fit. The one who didn't play golf with the boss. The one who wouldn't kiss the boss's butt. They were there to protect the process, the promotional process, et cetera, et cetera. Like we know there's a lawsuit pending in the police department. But just remember, I mean, it was most of Dave's peers were gone, but the people who were involved, he was involved his entire life. Not only when he was an active police officer, but he stayed involved until fundamentally the day he passed. So with that, my friend David, rest in peace.
Better man than Fall River deserved. A better
Far
man
better.
than Fall River deserved.
Far better.
No
And
question.
since we started talking about the police department, we have a new police chief.
Interim.
Interim, yeah, interim, but let's see what happens.
Now, here's the thing, okay? I have a problem because according to reports, Paul has said that Paul Garvin approached him about leaving the position of police chief. And my last meeting with Paul Garvin said he's not going. He said, I'm not going anywhere. If somebody says I'm going somewhere, ask them where so I know. So who's telling the truth? Who's telling the truth? Because this is very questionable.
You know what, Paul has his official nickname when it comes to the truth. The pathological prevaricator Paul.
Yeah.
So we know Paul never tells the truth.
Right.
And he may tell some version of the truth that's manipulated and twisted, but very little accurate information from Paul Coogan about anything, from the accident that his spouse was involved in to the accident that he was involved in, and everything in between.
Right.
So,
and nobody followed up on any of that. We were the only. As a matter of fact, we read the police report.
That's correct.
Right on the air. We had a copy of it. So it just makes, we're told that we don't know what we're talking about yet. We have the evidence. And the people go, oh, no, you don't have the evidence. I don't know what this was, but.
Well, a police report's not evidence, I guess. Paul's word is gospel.
Right.
But we do have it, whatever it was, but Paul's always got to kind of, this is political. He's running again. So he doesn't want to antagonize anybody. So, I didn't really get rid of him. He asked to leave. And so it's always, this manure that they shovel. But, the new police chief, interim police chief, we're going to drop interim. Everybody will know we've said that she's interim. She came out with some real
doozies.
Yeah. And she talked about, I guess her father was on, so she's a generational police officer, family business.
Her husband's on, her child is on.
Yeah, and obviously gives her an insight. She said something to the effect that the department hasn't changed since '68, and she wasn't going to attempt to. Well, that sounds actually, in a way, a lot of people I know are not happy. Oh, you're not going to mend fences. Well, you're not. When you're the leader of an organization, you don't mend fences. You run the organization.
Right.
Like I keep saying to people, it's not a social club. It's a job. Fire department's a job. Police department's a job. Those jobs have a tendency to create a lot of alliances and cliques because people who like each other begin to hang around with each other, and they don't hang around with people they dislike. So those
saw that with Dupere going to St. James.
Yeah, and they hang around, and so she said some things that if you looked at it from a managerial perspective, well, okay, yeah, we do need some stuff. Actually, one of our contributors sent me something that I know you and I both have this in our gigantic files, which could take up entire buildings, but sent me an article from August of this year. The brother of the police, et cetera, and it was about the actions of the DA. But what it said in this article, which was in August of this year, the Hardin case, was that Channel 12, this is a Channel 12 article, WPRI. He said, at worst, Mack alleged Quinn is covering for members of the Florida Police Department, which for years has been pockmarked with controversy, lawsuits, and criminal activity. So, listen, she's right. There are some serious problems, and it has been for a very long time. And what she said sounded, as someone who was in a leadership position, yeah, that's what you have to do. Will she do it? Or will the reorganization of the police department be what Paul Coogan wants the department to do? That's the concern I have. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. She said some really some things that could be said, well, we do need obviously some changes. There have been, through a whole bunch of chiefs, we've had problems. Not that they don't exist in other departments, but not to the degree that they were existing here. But is she going to do that? Or is she going to do what Paul wants her to do? Because we all know that she worked with Paul over at the school department. She was SRO. She worked with him a very long time. And I'm not casting any aspersions. I'm giving her she has a clean slate. Let's see what she does. But we know what happens when there are reorganizations, and Paul Coogan is anywhere near it. It always ends up a political reorganization that certain people get some really good jobs out of the deal. And certain people are punished if you don't fit. We've seen what Paul Coogan does. You don't do what you tell him, what he tells you to do, you're gone. We've seen it in the park department. We've seen it on the zoning board. We've seen it everywhere. We've even seen go where no man has gone before, to kind of paraphrase one of our favorite shows, CJ, Star Trek. He actually manipulated the law to get rid of the fifth member of the retirement board, which is supposed to be appointed by the retirement board, and what they did was illegal. And that's not dead yet. He had his two people vote in violation of their fiduciary obligation and the law. Just say no without any reason, just to push it into his hands. And then they only looked at that little tiny piece of the law that says, oh, when they can't make a decision, the mayor has to do it. Well, they couldn't make a decision because his people blocked it. They turned it into a draw. So we've seen what Paul Coogan does. Paul Coogan doesn't put anybody in any position unless they will do what they're told. And if they don't do what they're told, they're gone. So that's my concern about this whole thing. CJ, and with that, back to you.
You know, the interesting thing is she said things that we've talked about on this show numerous times. And I don't know if she watches, then maybe she took our suggestion. But she said she wants to go back to community policing. How long have we been talking about community policing?
Forever. Yeah.
Right. And that would be a good thing for Fall River, I believe. Okay? Get more cops out on the sidewalks. Get them on the street. Get them in the community so people know what's going on. And I don't mean driving around in your car. That's not exactly being in the community. Okay? Know what's going on. That's what community policing is all about, knowing what's going on. And we've been talking about that for years, and I think that's a good thing. But I think one of the, I don't know if it was the way she said it or how she said it, she said that she needs to modernize the Fall River Police Department. It hasn't changed since 1968 when my father got on the department. And there needs to be some changes into the police structure to address manpower issues. Now, wasn't Paul Garvin doing some of that?
I believe he was.
Now,
and I when she said that modernize, and that's therein lies the problem. You and I don't know. You know nursing. I know fire. I know fire
right.
department structures. She's speaking from a position of knowledge. Obviously, she's been a police officer for 37 years or something like that. Her father was a police officer. They know about the structure and things, and I'm sure there are a lot of things that. And that's the thing. Small communities have different policing methods and structures than medium-sized cities, and large cities, of course, have different things. But I guess there's some, I'm sure that policing has evolved. It sounds good.
It does.
It sounds like a good. She's right. I mean, look, there's not one way to do things in these scenarios. There are. Like I said, it depends a lot about the size of the department, the resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that from a managerial point because, I understand that concept with fire departments. Fire departments are a little easier, and I'll say it. I'm not saying it to be negative about fire departments, but fire departments are pretty simple because 90% of the personnel are normally assigned to suppression. So they're fighting fires. So all you got to do is make sure that you have, the chain of command, the officers on the trucks and stuff, where most of the manpower in fire departments are to fight fires, because obviously fighting fires is a labor-intensive job. You need a lot of people. You need people to pull ceilings and chop holes in roofs and drag hose and hook up pumps and do a lot of things. So by nature of the job, the police department is different. You have to have, major crimes. You've got a lot of things to do that patrolmen, can't do. So I will defer to her. We've had a lot of chiefs. We haven't seen a drastic change. As you said, I think Garvin was going to begin to change some things. Let's see what happens. But like I said, my fear is not that her ideas are good. My fear is that you can't. I know Paul Coogan. We've seen his record as mayor. we've seen him reorganize numerous departments, all of which ended up with more people, higher pays, and all his friends getting jobs. Is this new police chief, interim police chief, going to be allowed to do what she wants to do and given a fundamentally carte blanche? Go ahead, you're the chief, you're the expert in police. Let's see what your plan looks like, and then let's see what the public. And getting back to community policing, I mean, I remember the old days. Remember the neighborhood watches and things like that. I think that's we've been saying that for I don't know how long. Listen, it's a great idea to involve the community. You know, every once in a while you got to watch them, because some of these people get overly involved and they think they're Columbo or something like that, or Monk, you know, and they want to get a little too crazy. But it's good to engage the people, let them feel like, you know, they're helping their community, they're working with the police department. It gives a more positive. Gives it a positive relationship between the community and the police, because you interact with them more. You know, I heard a lot of good things, but my fear is not that this person doesn't know what to do. I'm not sure if she'll get what she really wants to do.
I agree. And again, we've seen how the manipulations go from the 6th floor. And like we saw with Paul Garvin, I don't like what you're doing. So, and I can't believe for a moment that Paul Garvin approached him and asked to leave. I don't believe that. Because I had spoken with Paul Garvin a couple of weeks before that. And he said, like I have said numerous times, if somebody says I'm going somewhere, tell them to tell you so I know where I'm going. It'd be nice to know.
And it's problematic, even with, with department heads. I know how it works. I was involved in that. You know that I was on a chief's list. And right. I was directly told by the mayor, I will not make you the chief because you will not do what you're told. Which, that is political speak for you will not take care of my friends and do what I tell you to do. When it comes to the department. And he was right. And I basically, so, I mean, I know that because the mayors want to be able to pick up the phone, and that's why I was always an advocate of civil service. Once in a while, you might get a chief with a backbone, and he'll stand up for what's right and take a mayor on. Probably chances are slim in Fall River. But I remember in Boston, and I said it before, where Leo Stapleton, who wrote a book, 30 Years on the Line in Boston, great book for firefighters. When they drastically cut the Boston Fire Department, he took on a mayor and he called a press conference and say, well, if you have a fire in your building, it's gone. He said, we're not going to go in and attempt to an interior attack. We're going to have to protect it from spreading because we don't have the manpower. They're stripping my department of the manpower. We cannot do offensive attack anymore. So I'm going to, your property is basically make sure you got your fire insurance paid. That's what he said. And he had a big set to do that in Boston. And they gave him his men back. It wasn't long after they put the men back on the Boston Fire Department. And then his son became a commissioner later on, and he advocated for this public safety, not for a politician or for anything else. He advocated for the safety of the people in the city of Boston. So ultimately, politicians always figure out a way to screw it up. So you know what they did? They changed the rules, like they always do. Change the rules. When Stapleton and his son and previous commissioners had become the head of the Boston Fire Department, you needed 10 years, a decade as a chief officer in order to even be considered for the job. You couldn't come up from lieutenant like Paulie's brother. jump all these people because you're up the mayor's butt and get a job that you're not qualified for. You had to have 10 years on a line as a chief officer to be a commissioner. So what did they do? They changed the rules. They made it a contract job. And what did they do as soon as they did that? They didn't even put a firefighter in charge of the Boston Fire Department. They put a retired naval officer who was friendly with the mayor. The moral of that story is, you want something screwed up, give it to the government. But we know how that goes. So
only when a politician gets a hold of it.
That's right. Only when they get their mitts on it. But
hey, for anybody who happened to watch or be present at last night's city council meeting, I would highly recommend you watch the video. The last 20 minutes. The last 20 minutes. It is an eye-opener. And I'll tell you now, it really makes one city councilor look bad. Real bad. Okay? I'm not going to say what her name is.
Kind of narrows it down. But it's okay.
But I'll tell you now, it made her look very bad. And it was interesting because yesterday the meeting started it was a public hearing on the tax factor. Remember the tax factor? Determines who pays how much? So there was a public hearing on that. Guess how many people from the community showed up for that public hearing?
0.
But you'll all complain. You'll all complain. You will all complain. There was not a turnout for that. And there needed to be a turnout for that. Because in November, or at the next city council meeting, I'm not sure which one it's going to be at now, when they vote on the tax factor, which determines the taxes for 2025, 2026, or for the year 2025, let me tell you something. If you don't open your mouth, you don't have any place to speak. If you can't open your mouth about it, shut up. Don't put your foot in it. Because this is getting to be ridiculous. I let my opinions be known by communications with the city council. Okay? I had a conversation over the weekend with a city councilor in regards to my concern about the tax factor and about where I want the tax factor to be found. I already know that Michelle Dion has always supported the tax factor where it benefits the residential taxpayer. And I've been surprised because since the Chamber of Commerce has merged with New Bedford and has now become one South Coast, they haven't showed up at the tax factor hearings or meetings. Because normally they're saying the business is needed, you know, and the city council bought that story for a while.
Yeah. Well, you know, the irony is the Chamber of Commerce is the most anti-worker organization. Yeah. Yeah, well, let's hope that she gets to do what she said she was going to do and see what happens. We wish them all luck. It's difficult. It's difficult to be in charge, David, of an organization, and even more difficult when there is always the political machinations, especially with this mayor. It's hard to do your job as anything and do it effectively when you got a mayor who will fire you if you don't do what he wants. So we've seen it, like I said. Remember the park department fiasco? We know people who were directly involved in it, people who were involved in it got thrown off the zoning boards. We got thrown off everything. And when they threw off a guy who had been the only 5th member of the retirement board for 26 years, the only one since they established the 5th member, because he didn't give him exactly what he wanted. He only gave him half, and they bounced him so he could put one of his people on. So it is what it is. But, you know, we can't you know, you see the tax factor, you're going to complain. We've got to complain a lot more. We've got to go to the polls, you know, because some of these people practice this November. Go there and vote. I know it's hard in this state because you don't have anybody basically running against anybody most of the time because they hate anybody that isn't a wokey. But remember what you're voting for. I mean, it boggles my mind when I see this. I mean, I got to switch gears here and go into because I got to get this. I don't know if you saw that interview that Kamala is now on the. She never did interviews and she's just bombing every place she goes. But I'm going to tell you something. Did you see the one? I was on NBC, one of the major networks. The guy actually asked her a couple of questions and a couple of follow-up questions. And how anybody could want that imbecile as the president of the United States is beyond me. Because she's proven she couldn't answer a question to Oprah. She couldn't. All these softball people, she goes to her allies and they ask a simple question like, "How are you going to do it?" And one of them, she said, "Well, we have to raise the taxes." And the guy said, "Well, suppose Congress and the Senate don't give you a tax." "Well, we have to do it." Well, that's like a 4-year-old child. You have to do it. Well, you can't do it. What is the political reality? You as the president of the United States, how are you going to do this? But the best one was on that national interview. He asked her, and he actually had stats. He said, "You know, in your 3.5, 4 years as vice president, your administration has let billions and millions, 4 times the amount that was coming across the border during the Trump administration. Do you think that it was wrong to open the borders like that?" And she went off on some kind of tangent, and it was like she was nowhere. Talking about, I grew up middle class. She was all over the place, as she normally is. Talking word salad. Then he said, "No, I asked you, do you think you should have, Then she went off on, well, the Congress has got to do this, the Congress has got to do that, blaming the Congress. Well, Joe Biden didn't do it with the Congress's approval. He did everything by executive fiat, and she agreed with it. And then he asked her a third time, and that's the best one. She tried to answer the question, but she showed that she's felony stupid. Not misdemeanor stupid. She's felony stupid. He said to her, again, 4 times the amount. And she said, well, we're not, we've been trying to put forth solutions to the problem. And we have, and we've cut, and she got around, she said nothing about any kind of plan. And then she said, and we've cut the border crossings in half. Well, maybe I'm a little too over analytical and a little too sensitive to numbers and words. But you told me this, CJ. If we were getting 4 times the amount of people we were before you took office, and we cut it in half, we're still getting twice as many as we were before. I mean, isn't that right?
That sounds about right to me.
And that felony stupid moron, that was her answer. And
well, what was interesting was because after that question was answered in the news broadcast that evening, yeah, they said that border crossings are down 50% from last month.
Yeah. But this is the way they manipulate the numbers.
She's got a partial truth there. It's down 50% from last month.
Yeah. Well, she's also not saying that border crossings are down, but they're not really down because now they're flying them in. They're not crossing the border.
Right.
They flew all the Haitians right into and dropped them off in the center of the country. So it's not a border crossing.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, J.D. Vance in that vice presidential debate clearly explained it, how they're doing it. With the swipe of a pen, they give them some status that they don't come across the border. So that's one of the reasons border crossing. And the other reason border crossings are down is because Texas, the state of Texas and Governor Abbott have used state resources to close the Texas border.
Right.
Their border crossings are down 85%. Border crossings aren't down 85%. Those border crossers have now gone to Arizona and California to come in. But, I mean, you look at this and you go, my God, how can anybody consider this woman? She's a total train wreck. She doesn't have an answer for anything. She's clueless. She doesn't have 1 ounce of political savvy. So you know when you vote for her. Look, I drove up the North End. I saw a few Harris Waltz signs, and it always, I get like a brain freeze when I go by there. But, what they should just do is, look, then nobody can be this stupid. Nobody can think this woman is capable of being a president of the United States. Just come out and say it, wokies. You want Obama to have his 4th term. Because that's who's running the country, Obama. And everybody knows it. He's the one that ordered her to go do the interviews now because that she's tanking. And all softball interviews, which she's tanking. But let's just, instead of take your Harris Waltz sign down and just put Barack for president again. Let's make him a lifetime president and dictator. Because that's what you want. Because anybody that thinks that Tim Waltz, Tiny Tim, and her are capable of doing anything. He couldn't run his own state. He destroyed his own state. He let the damn state burn down. And he lies about everything. They killed at least 8 infants after birth in his state. He said that never happened, but it did. There's proof of it. So when you're going to vote for these people, be real, at least be truthful. At least be truthful. You want Obama to run the country. So just put a, Harris Waltz for Obama sign on your lawn, because I just almost fell off the couch when I watched that interview. And she said, well, we're down, we've cut it in half. Well, if you were getting 4 times the amount, we're still getting 2 times the amount, you dope. I said, so you're going to say it took you 4 years to not even eliminate it, but to just cut it in half? And even, like you said, even that was a lie. It's like when they talk about jobs. Oh, the jobs are up. 90% of those jobs are government jobs. And the rest of the jobs are mostly illegals. And statistically, they've proven that. But the Democrats lie about everything.
And have they taken into consideration the number of jobs that were lost due to the pandemic?
Of course not.
No.
Of course not. You know that. That we're getting jobs back now that were lost in the pandemic. We're getting illegals filling those jobs. They've all been well documented. And then, of course, you have a ton of hey, look, we got 87,000 new IRS agents, right? So that's going to uptick the amount of job creation. The job creation's been in government jobs. So, the old saying, figures don't lie, but liars can figure. And when you manipulate numbers like they do, all they want to do is confuse people. It's like when they start babbling about all these numbers with tax rates and stuff, and it's real simple. Just tell us the bottom line. But they try to bring it in. You look at every economist. You look at her, she can't do simple math. She thought that was an answer. Oh, we're only getting twice as many as before. So we've done a really good job. But for the last 3.5 years, we're getting 4 times more. So, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, the electorate, they don't watch anything. She had an interview. Well, what the hell was that? I can't even remember. Go Daddy, your daddy's mama. I don't know what the hell. I don't. Some podcaster who does fundamentally a show about sex. This is her target audience. You know, these people who live on TikTok and podcasts and all this other stuff who know nothing about what's going on in the world. They probably don't even know there's a war raging in the Middle East and one in Europe. And they don't care. But they will care when it finally bites them in the butt, and it will ultimately. And then the other scary part is they're suppressing all these things that are coming out now about. They just broke up a terrorist plot. An Afghan was going to blow himself up at a polling place.
In the name of ISIS.
In the name of ISIS, and there was another juvenile involved that was going to, make the trip to the 40. And there's a whole bunch of Iranian hit squads supposedly deployed to try to take out Trump and Vance and any of their enemies. And this is what they let in the country. But you're not seeing this too much on the mainstream media. We're in serious jeopardy in this country. Imagine being at a polling booth somewhere and having somebody go in there and blow it up. We're worse than a third world country now. We're like a fourth world country. We're like Somalia when they were having the warlord feuds, and they still are. But I mean, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Black Hawk Down, but what a circus. And but the thing is that they're suppressing everything. The mainstream media is in collusion with the Democratic Party, and you don't get any news, and the news you do get is distorted. So I know the people that watch us most of the time do their homework because they give us a lot of information and they research like that. They helped us out on a show. They pulled that article from August about the police department. And that's the problem. You look at what a local media source wrote. It's not good for the police department because whether everything is 100% accurate or not, it casts doubt on the department. It makes their job harder because unfortunately most people don't realize that these things happen, but the majority of police officers are going to work every day, strapping on a gun and going out in harm's way, and they're doing the job.
Which, by the way, Kamala has a Glock.
Yeah, that's crap. That's crap. Where does she live? Does she still live in California?
Well, that's the big question because some people say that she's claiming Washington, D.C. as her residence. So
I want to know where the Glock is because I don't think you can buy a Glock in California.
I don't think you can buy a Glock in Washington, D.C.
Well, she's
could get it in Maryland. You could get
she may have got a waiver. Somebody that said, because like in Massachusetts, there's certain firearms you can't buy in Massachusetts because they're not available with smaller magazines.
Right.
You can't buy a gun that has more than 10 round capability. So a lot of these weapons do not make that. You can buy some that have special special. You can have to special order them to states like Massachusetts that limit the capacity. You can't buy like you can buy, certain like Security 9, Ruger Security 9, Smith and Wesson, certain Smith and Wesson 9mm that are available. When you buy them in any other state, they come with 13 round magazines or 15 round magazines, but in Massachusetts you can only get the model that they will only give you a 10 round magazine. But that's why somebody already jumped on it and said, "Oh, she can't have a Glock." Well, she's also law enforcement technically because she was a DA, and they do get special permits and stuff like that when she was in there. But I still don't. And she said she went to the range. But that's one follow-up question I'd like to see. And I would have said, he didn't ask her. I said, what model Glock do you have? And what is the caliber? Because I would have loved to see her stumble all over that one.
That's why they didn't ask. Hey, before we run out of time, I've got a few things to say. Number one, I received this a little while ago. Carlos Cesar has resigned as president of the Flint Neighborhood Association, and he says it's because he believes that there was a conflict of interest with 501c3 in his political career. There is no conflict of interest, but I'm not going to tell him how to run his campaign or how to run his life. Bernadette Simos is now the association president. I wish her the best of luck, and hopefully she can get her people out to the city council meeting, the next city council meeting, to talk about the Ball School, which, by the way, I received during our broadcast, a story, and I wish I would have seen it. I'm going to see if I can see it sometime today. Paul Coogan gave an interview to WPRI. It seems WPRI was getting a lot of information from Paul in regards to the Duvall School. And he all of a sudden wants to put affordable housing there. If he wanted to put affordable housing there, why didn't you step in and stop that from going forward? That would have been 10 affordable housing units, a community hall for the people in the community to use. It would have all been there. But no, you wouldn't have gotten credit for it, Paul. So I'll see how many affordable housing units actually go there, because I don't believe a word he says. But all of a sudden now he wants affordable housing units there. Well, there was a developer who was going to put them in. Oh, and I want you to remember, he now wants to condemn the building so he can sell it for $1,000.
Yeah, to one of his pals.
Here's the problem. Remember this, Paul. Carlos Cesar was offered $70,000 for that building. $70,000. If the city sells it for even one dime less, we know it's a political favor. So we're going to watch you on that, and we're going to see how much of a political favor you pay back to one of your developer friends.
Hey, look, count your blessings. You could have sold it to him for $1.
That's true. That's always possible as well.
So you're going to sell a $70,000 building for $1,000. Look, we know this has been in the bag. And when he says he's going to build affordable housing, what does that mean? 3 or 4 units out of the entire thing? We don't know, because we know one thing about Paul. What he says is always subject to interpretation.
And that's a problem. I really want you to watch the last 20 minutes of the city council meeting and see who knew about this job, this scam to pull the building out from underneath the Flint Neighborhood Association. And there's a question about there being a cloud on title now, because I don't believe for a moment, after my conversations with the board of director members, that the board took a vote on transferring the building to the city of Fall River. If if it had gone to court and a judge ordered it to be transferred, that's one thing. But that was signed off by Paul and somebody who claims to be the secretary. Which I don't recognize the name because I've never seen it filed with the Secretary of State's office. So there's a lot of questions here. A lot of questions. And I want the people who watch this show, their family, their friends, to get out at the next city council meeting and voice your disgust with the mayor and make sure you voice your opinion on the tax factor.
I'm going to put a sign on my front lawn.
You have no place to complain if you don't. It's about time you realize, unless you open your mouth, you're not going to be listened to. I just noticed on Facebook somebody complaining about the rents, blaming the landlords. And one of the people who responded said, it's not the landlords. It's a draconian 24% increase in the water rates. It's the tax rate increases.
Yeah.
Okay? Those are the things that are raising your taxes. It's the fact that my insurance alone on my home went up over $1,000. And I haven't had a claim in years. Okay?
Yeah. How about your car
Those are the
insurance?
things that are equating to higher rents. And the majority of that is coming from Paul Coogan, and Paul Coogan. So remember that. When you go to the ballot box next year and you see Paul Coogan's name there and you put an X there, you're voting for high rents, high taxes, high water rates. And you're voting to give away your community to the developers. That's what a vote for Paul Coogan stands for.
Spindle City Straight Talk's new political sign for the election a year from November. Anybody but Coogan.
That's it. That's it. We've been down that road before. I know that. So make sure you get your voice heard because it's important. It's very important. Your vote counts. I contacted elections and asked them when the ballots are going out because they haven't gone out yet. Somebody told me that they can't go out until the 19th, but that made no sense because Swansea and Somerset have already sent them out. They received the ballots last Wednesday or Thursday. And I had a conversation with the city councilor about this. Why haven't they gone out? Is it because the law says they can't go out until the 19th? Which means you get 2 weeks to vote? I don't know. I think those ballots should be in the mail already. That was the whole purpose of having mail-in ballots. But, hey, who am I? I'm a complainer. That's it. That's it. I'm a complainer. What are you laughing at?
Hey, you know, I'm part of the club too. You know, I mean, but the thing is that the reality is that the squeaky wheel sometimes doesn't get the grease in this city. You get dumped on, but you still got to be in the fight. That's the problem. These people give up. They're apathetic. We can change this. You know, we can change the city. We can, you know, the people, the 40,000 people who don't show up to vote are the people who created the 23 or 24% water rate increase. These obscene political deals to give the richest people in our area more money, more tax breaks, while we pay more taxes, higher insurance for everything, more for our water, and they don't care. Nope. Because they're not paying that water bill. They're passing it on. To the people that are in their apartments. As you said, people are complaining about the landlords. Yeah, don't complain about your owner-occupied landlord.
Right.
Complain about the absentee landlords who don't give a shit because they're taking their money out of Fall River and they're getting all kinds of tax breaks thanks to Paul Coogan. Now Paul Coogan's going to give a $70,000 school out for $1,000, then give them a TIF.
And remember, every time you get a TIF, that increases the rent.
That's right. And then they're going to waive the parking, so you'll never find a parking place in the area again.
And the parking over by the DeVault School is already tight. As a matter of fact, so tight that Carlos had to rent parking spaces in the yard just to pay the rainwater tax that he was assessed on the building, even though he didn't have water or sewage. He would
Right.
still assess that rainwater tax
Yeah.
at the commercial rate.
The tax man cometh, Coogan.
Yeah,
We got Taxachusetts, and we're the capital of Taxachusetts, right here in Fall River.
that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. It was a great show. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. And don't keep your mouth shut. Open it up once in a while. Have a great day. We'll see you Friday.